Brian, welcome to Future Speak.
We have become a very quick communicating culture where it's so easy just to drop something down in a text message or social media and not necessarily engage fully in the conversation.
Brian, welcome to Future Speak. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. As you know, future of work, what it looks like, how it's going to impact us. There's so many big stats out there. And we forget a lot of the time, unless you're people like us who work with people, that they're real people behind this. You're someone who owns a business at the cutting edge of this change. I'd love you to share your perspectives as an HR leader and a business owner. But before we get into the meat of this, I'd love you to just introduce yourself and tell everyone who's watching and listening a bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Wallace. And first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this. I really appreciate it. I am a human resources professional that has been working in the field for the last 29 years. And in a variety of different capacities and industries. I currently own a company called HR Strategies Now, and my primary focus is in helping small businesses to get to the point where they can thrive and grow more effectively through the implementation of solid HR practices and procedures that lead to them being able to hire, engage, motivate, and retain top talent. So that's the nature of what I do.
Wonderful. And even that in itself, there's a lot we can unpack in that as we talk today. When we hear the future of work, et cetera, what does the future of work mean for you personally?
Well, there are a lot of different elements to it. You've got technology, you've got social change, you've got management style change, you've got the pace of change itself in our culture. But when I think about the future of work, there are a lot of things that have evolved over the last couple of years in particular. And that includes expectations from employees and employers both in how that working relationship is supposed to happen. So, some of the contributing factors may include things like gender parity or COVID and hybrid work requirements, collaboration and communication skills, even down to how people identify themselves. And so when it comes to developing the strategies to help small businesses thrive, you have to take all of these factors into consideration because they are going to play a significant part in how you develop the right types of practices that help the small business owners manage their teams most effectively.
Yeah. And the communication piece throughout all of this is fundamental, right? How is that evolving with what you're seeing in the workplace right now?
Well, it's interesting because, first of all, there's a lot of you have a mixed bag in the style of managers that are out there. Some are very traditional and, think about command and control and, just do it my way, get the job done and be finished with it. And then you've got others who are starting to realize that that's not always the most effective way to approach people. People have an inherent need to be valued, seen, and heard. And those companies and those managers or owners who are able to really capitalize on that type of element and really communicate those issues are those that are really going to succeed long term. And that's part of the engagement calculation, if you will, or the engagement principle, is you have to manage people in a manner that's going to drive their engagement and their motivation. So you have the management style issue. You also have the effects of all of the social media and
Mm.
texting capability and email communication principles. We have become a very quick communicating culture where it's so easy just to drop something down in a text message or social media and not necessarily engage fully in the conversation.
Mm.
Some of the time that's really helpful because it allows you to share information very quickly. And other times you have to really be careful because that quick interchange can lead to miscommunication.
Yeah.
It can lead to misinterpretation. And it can really create some challenges for people long term, especially if they're not willing to truly engage in the conversation that's going to be most meaningful in the running of the business and the furthering of their careers.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, isn't it? Even before we had COVID, we were still faced with a challenge that we haven't had to deal with before, in that we've got 5 generations in the workforce now
Exactly.
that we haven't had before. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer used to picking up the phone. I'm more used to Zoom. I WhatsApp a lot. I text a lot. I do use WhatsApp video notes. And yet other people will say, oh, no, 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 no. This is how I want to communicate with you. That's all part of this issue with communication, right? And who controls that? Who says how you communicate with someone?
Right. That's exactly right. There are so many different opportunities right now. And it's not just an opportunity to communicate differently, it's a responsibility,
Mm.
especially as for small business owners and as HR professionals. You have to take the ownership to really understand what is going to be most effectual for the people that you're communicating with. Now, you and I, for example, communicate via Zoom or via email, and part of that is just proximity. You're in a different area than I am. But some people certainly prefer to communicate more face to face and find that more effective. Others, it's just, hey, drop me a quick text and I'll respond to you as quickly as I can. So you certainly have to be more adaptable. You have to think through what is going to be most effective for your audience. And you have to be ready because we have not seen the end of change when it comes to how people communicate. And it's going to be really neat to see how that continues to evolve over time.
Yeah.
You also mentioned, Sam, the different generations that are out there currently. Baby boomers communicated very differently than
Mm.
millennials, and had very different values as well. So when you think about the way that people communicate with each of those groups, as a business owner, you have to be cognizant of how people in the different generations are going to receive your message. Some offhand comment that you might make to one generation might mean something completely different to another. And so a big part of my role is working with the business owners and figuring out how do you drive the right type of messages to the right people in order to really build your business and help it run most effectively.
Yeah. And you touched on something there that, a quick comment here or there, dependent on, and that's more over and above generational, right? It's down to filters. And that's the other issue we had even before we've seen this acceleration in the future of work. And that's equally of an issue, which goes back to how do you control that communication channel? And at some point, certainly as business leaders, there needs to be an element of control without taking away that continuity that's also required with what we're seeing through that fast pace of change, right? There's a balance there.
Sure, absolutely. And when you think about the different generations of the business owners that they're in personally, what may seem effective to them may or may not be effective to their employees and to the audience. So the business owner really has a strong responsibility to make sure that their message is, first of all, very clear, that they are able to elaborate far enough to really connect with the people that are working with and for them. and that it communicates the right level of detail that will allow people to really understand what their vision is and how to drive that vision forward. There are some things where, hey, it's easy for us just to pick up and create a Zoom conference, which is great because it allows us to see each other's faces and really be able to interpret more what's being said. But there are also times where owners or leaders need to reduce everything to writing so it can be driving consistency in practice and control risk and everything along those lines. All of this really has to do with driving engagement and motivation and the end work product. It's about connecting with people. It's about building relationships, the right types of relationships, and it's about helping people thrive.
Absolutely. And what do you see as the opportunity for you as an HR business leader with everything that's on the horizon that we know about today?
Oh, goodness. Well, first of all, when I think about working with clients, it's about, first of all, helping them understand what is strategic human resources. What's the practice? What's the principle? What are we after? And as I mentioned before, it's all about figuring out how to hire, engage, motivate, and retain the right talent, because that's what's going to help you to be successful. And so when you think about all of the different factors that are involved in society and technology and everything right now, it's a matter of just figuring out how are we going to work together and create the right principles and the right procedures to really make sure that this is effective as possible and that we're able to gain ground even more quickly. So personally, I think it's tremendously exciting. Just thinking about the potential for where this is going to go over time.
Oh, absolutely. And conversely, when you look forward with your own vision and your own aspirations, what are the challenges that you're prepared for today to overcome?
It's a good question. I think that so much of my work is about empowering other people to get the best results that they can. And so when it comes to challenges that I may experience in helping them to do that, it's about understanding the changes that are going on in the culture and the business world. It's about understanding the pace of change and how that affects the small business owner. It's about understanding the market and some of the things that they are facing. Figuring out new ways to adapt and be flexible with how you support other people and how you help them to gain self-confidence in starting their own business, which is a tremendous step for anybody that attempts it. It's critically important. And if I can help them to really be able to gain more traction by using differing approaches or sometimes performing custom work, it can really make a difference in their long-term future. That's exciting for me, by the way. It's just, how do you reach somebody at a point where you can help to drive them toward the future that they want to attain?
Yeah, absolutely. And I often talk about the fact that we are looking at future-back thinking now rather than present future, because the data we've got today is actually going to be relevant tomorrow. So there's
the pace of change is fast.
Exactly. And how we deal with failure is now something different as well, right? Because now we've got to try things that we haven't tried before. We are going to make mistakes. That doesn't mean we failed. That means we've just given something a go. It doesn't work. Move on. How do you think business owners are going to cope with the increased instance in some sectors where they are going to make mistakes, particularly where their people are concerned?
Well, you're talking to a self-proclaimed perfectionist, unfortunately. um, and so, dealing with failure is not an easy thing, but we have to get used to it because you're absolutely right. We have to be willing to take more chances. We have to try new things in new areas that we're not familiar with. And there's wonderful benefit in that because
Mm.
I don't know about you, but personally, I learn just as much, if not more, from failures as I do from successes. And if people are willing to get a little more uncomfortable and get, I guess, comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable, that makes a huge difference in whether they're successful or not long term. Um, you have to be trying new things all the time at this point. And there are some things that don't change over time. The way that people want to be valued and treated and respected, those types of things are pretty consistent. But the manner in which you approach them, the manner in which you communicate with them, the fact that you need to be focused today, for example, on driving employee experience, which increases employee engagement, which increases the customer experience. That's a relatively new principle.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to try different things to adapt and make those things happen. The customer experience or the customer demands at this point are much higher than they used to be. People have become very accustomed to wanting what they want when they want it, and how they want it. And so now you have to be willing to try different things to exceed their expectations if you want your business to succeed. So helping people get uncomfortable with that, or excuse me, get comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable is a big part of what I'm working through.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as business owners, we are used to being in that zone where we're uncomfortable. And I think you and I have had conversations previously where if the second you are comfortable as a business owner is the second that you either need to shut up shop or really look at your business and think, okay, I need to work on something here.
Right. And the people who really succeed, as I mentioned, are those who can push up against that discomfort and who can really embrace it, because that tells you that you're getting something done. If you start to sit back and rest on your feet, there's something that's not quite right. You're not adapting. You're not flexing. You're not growing the business, and pretty soon you'll find that the business has gotten away from you. So it's a matter of staying on your toes, and you keep fighting forward.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely right with that.
Yeah. So when we look at your role and how your role is going to evolve in the future of work, how do you see that changing?
Well, you take the employee experience, for example. There is much more of an emphasis on that now than there has been in the past. And so we're having to think about what are the expectations of the employee when it comes to their day-to-day work assignments and the type of experience that they have when they either work from home or when they first come into the office. And that requires adaptation. It requires thinking through procedures differently and thinking through career paths and, how you bring an employee to the point where they truly buy into everything that you're trying to do as a business owner, and the way that you cast your vision. So while there's, like I said before, some principles that don't change, there are a lot of principles that do, and your approach has to change, and you have to become, again, more comfortable. So a big part of my responsibility, as I see it, is to help people navigate through those changes and figure out the ways to be able to accomplish the things that they want to do, even when they may not have an idea of what that final destination is, helping them to vet it and figure it out. So there's a lot to do. And it's exciting. It's, thinking about the future of all of this and the potential benefits and gains that people can have, even as the gig economy is kicking up and small businesses are becoming, more commonplace for people. There's a great need ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Brian, if you were talking to a prospect today, and they had concerns as to the future of their business in terms of managing their people, what's the best piece of advice you would give them?
Well, first of all, I think it'd be really helpful to be able to sit down with them and ask several questions to really understand their business, because it's not until you understand the business and what they're trying to accomplish that you can really create the best practices that are going to help them. So I guess the first question that I would ask is simply, tell me about your business. How does it function? How does it operate? What are you after? But when it comes to advice, I guess the key piece of advice would be focus on building relationships with your people, because in the end, it's going to be based on your ability to get things done. It's going to be based on your ability to build loyalty and build collaboration and build a partnership and engagement with people, because they're the ones that are going to be carrying your vision forward. So you need to be thinking about how you're keeping that vision in front of people, and whether or not they're going to be receptive to it based on whether they trust you, whether they like you, and whether they respect you. So it's all about building a relationship with people at this point.
Yeah.
And there are some small business owners I think that are probably going to bristle at that, because they're thinking, well, I'm so used to being able just to tell people what needs to be done, and I expect them to get it done. And this is a new way of thinking. It's a different approach. When you start talking about, using emotional intelligence and being cognizant of how people are interpreting your message, it's another level of work.
You're so right. It absolutely is. And I think the theme that I've come away with from our conversation today, it's that continual growth mindset. It's that continual working on improving not just what we communicate, but how we communicate, and
Absolutely.
being really clear in that.
Absolutely. When it comes to a vision, for example, somebody once gave me an illustration that I found really kind of fascinating. It was, if you can imagine that you're driving down a California highway in a convertible, and your music is up loud and you're having a time of your life. You're driving 75 miles an hour down the coast, and everything is great. But then you hit a fog bank, and what do? Well, naturally, you slow down, you turn the music down, you focus a little heavier on what's going on around you. And then as soon as you come out of that fog bank, you're able to get back to really thriving in that drive and enjoying it. And it's the same way with how you communicate with people. If your communication becomes unclear, if things become foggy for people, if you're not connecting with them, then it causes them to slow down psychologically and emotionally and become more cautious, if you will. And that's going to inhibit their productivity. And so it's all about how you communicate and how you reduce the barriers in that communication and in that relationship with people. So finding ways to drive that as effectively as possible is really important.
That's a brilliant
analogy. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, it's not. It was great. And I love that analogy. I could really see it. You could really visualize that. And that's got real power. So thank you, Brian. Brian, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. And thank you for your wisdom and just sharing your thoughts on what the future of work looks like. This is a very personal journey for all of us. Some of us have more hopes, more fears than others, but we all have our own opinion, and it's valuable. So thank you for your contribution today.
Thanks so much, Sam. I appreciate you having me on.
Pleasure. See you soon, Brian.
Have a great day.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.